Hey y'all, it's Heel Heat time.
Hi everybody, welcome to Heel Heat. My name is George Coles. This is our WWE show for the week. Let's jump right into it. First, we're going to start off with the so-so segments. They're not bad, they're not good, they're just there on the show. First off, Cody Rhodes versus Alberto Del Rio. This was a match I kind of expected a little bit more for. I think they're trying to push Cody in the way of being a heel. I think he's a more natural face. The fans actually gravitate to him. Del Rio gets the win, of course, adding to Cody's frustration. Just to me, something was off with the match and it didn't quite click like I would have liked it to. Next up, Los Matadors versus Heath Slater and Drew McIntyre, or as I'd like to say, the cannon fodder for El Torito versus Hornswoggle build-up for the We LC match. How that's not offensive, I don't know. The first time these two wrestled each other, I thought it was kind of cool, kind of neat. The fact that they built a feud over it, kind of, I don't know. It's losing its interest to me, no matter what you gimmick it as. Slater and Drew McIntyre pick up the win, and even the announcers mentioned how often that these guys lose, and that it's been since the Carter administration, or whatever they said, since they picked up a win. Last but not least, on the so-so segments, a segment that kind of came off as boring in my opinion. Randy Orton versus Roman Reigns. We had the standoff with the Shield and Evolution in the beginning. Ric Flair coming out, shaking hands with everybody, and endorsing Shield. But then we see the two start wrestling, which breaks down into a brawl, which we all kind of expected. I don't know, for some reason, this just didn't have a special feel, especially with it being the main event of the night. I would have rather have seen the Daniel Bryan Kane segment be the one going off the air as the main event. But we'll talk about that in a moment. Now next up, we're going to get into our bad portion of the night. First off was Sheamus versus Titus O'Neil. They started off really hot, and I thought they were doing something really special with Titus. And they had the opportunity to build a new monster heel with Titus in this match. However, one brogue kick takes him out, and Sheamus continues to be Diet John Cena. I mean, there's only one Cena, there's only one unstoppable Superman. They make Sheamus try to be that. I think Sheamus is desperately in need of a gimmick change, at least not a gimmick refresher. The next up had elements of good in it, but it drug on for way too long. That's the Dolph Ziggler, Hugh Jackman, Damian Sandow as Magneto. Sandow was really funny at points. Like I said, the whole segment just drug on way too long. Hugh Jackman with the excitement. I mean, I understand he's a big wrestling fan and he's excited to be there. This all could have been a 5-minute segment, a 2-minute segment, 3-minute segment, even could have been something they did in the back. But they wasted a lot of our time. And that's why I didn't like it. I didn't think the Magneto costume was quite funny, to be honest. But you take one joke and you stretch it out for 15 minutes or whatever the segment lasted, it kind of makes the joke not as funny anymore. Speaking of jokes, we had Alexander Rusev versus Xavier Woods. Xavier, a multi-talented wrestler who they just brought up the wrong way, and it's killed anything they could have built with him. Without them sending him back to developmental or doing something crazy like that, I fear he's going to be one of the guys that ends up being cut. On the flip side, and this is something I don't remember if I mentioned it last week, but Rusev to me is not getting over as a monster heel. Lana is awesome. She's amazing. She's beautiful. She adds to the flavor. Rusev The one thing that it bothers me so bad is the facial expressions. Every match, every involvement, he looks like an emotionless drone, or actually, he looks like he has sad puppy face. Just like that. You gotta emote. You gotta show us something. John Cena showed us something. He showed us worry. He showed us anger. He showed us fear. Bray Wyatt shows us he's evil. Shows us his maniacal abilities. Sheamus, even though I hate when they do it, he laughs and jokes and smiles. If you're a crushing monster, you should have crushing monster mannerisms, and that includes either growling, snorting, I don't care. Do what Goldberg did. Do the growls and the snorts, do mean faces, yell, scream. Just don't give me that one sad puppy look, because I don't believe you as a monster. Now, coming off of that, we're going to go into our question of the week. Question of the week last week was, what type of gimmick match would you be most excited to see return? Now, we got some answers from our friends. The first from our good friend Closure Domus. Bring back the King of the Ring as a pay-per-view. It was a launch pad for legends like Austin, Triple H, Angle, Edge, and Brock Lesnar. I fully agree. I'd like to see it as a pay-per-view. At the very least, I'd like to see it as a special edition of Raw. Next is from our good friend Dizzlepup. I automatically think of the Iron Man match, but I think you need two very special wrestlers in their prime to pull it off, like Hart and Michaels were. Ditto with TLC matches. The Dudleys, Edge and Christian, and the Hardys were special talent. But yeah, I'd love to see Bryan and Cesaro, Reigns or Orton do an Iron Man match. That would be amazing. Any of those. I really think any combination of those four guys would give us a fantastic match. Randy Orton, people seem to forget, by the way, they booked him as of recently. He's a multi-talented wrestler. He can do pretty much anything you would. And I think JBL's absolutely right. If you were to create a wrestler, he would be Randy Orton. Right. Back to the questions. Next one's from @AUP116, another good friend of ours from Twitter. He put the King of the Ring, but with meaning, like in 02, winner becomes the number one contender for the WWE title. Move Money in the Bank back to Mania. It was 1,000 times better. Also, tornado tag matches and better Survivor Series matches. Like the idea with a tornado tag match. It would work out with teams like the Matadors, like Slater and Drew McIntyre, the Uso brothers. You get two fast-paced teams going at it. I think it could be a very much a highlight of the night type of match. That was a very good suggestion there. A little bit off the beaten path. I enjoyed that idea though. Next up is from Benjamin Me. For this week's question of the week, I'd like two types of matches to return. First, the submission-only match, whether it is Austin versus Bret Hart in a brawl style, or Angle versus Benoit with a technical style. I love those matches. Second isn't really a gimmick match, but it's something JR talks about a lot in his podcast. I'd like to see the return of time limit matches. I think that no time limit takes away a legitimate ending that makes both wrestlers look strong, but neither look weak. It also means that you don't have to have run-ins when no one is going to get over. Preaching to the choir, my friend. Some of my favorite matches in the history of wrestling have ended in a 1-hour draw. I think it's a 15-minute draw, or a 20-minute, half hour, whatever you may want to be. It's a very good way to keep two guys, like he said, looking strong. In the era that we're at in wrestling, there's no longer jobber matches. Everybody wrestles everybody. There's no longer that special match. That's why they bring in the part-timers to give us those special matches that we don't see every week. Something easily, and I could pick a match, I'm just going to pick a match random out of this show. If a match like Sheamus and Titus O'Neil. They started bashing each other back and forth, and at the end, both were kind of winded, both were kind of beat down, and it goes to a 15-minute draw. Makes Titus look like he's equal to Sheamus without beating Sheamus. It doesn't make Sheamus look any weaker because he didn't lose to Titus O'Neil. So I agree with that. I enjoyed that. My personal pick, and I always kind of, to me, I would love to see them come back, and I think someone mentioned it on their the submission match. But I'd like to see the what am I trying to think here? The like kind of like the Lions Den match or something to that effect, where it is a submissions only match, kind of somewhere of a hybrid of an I Quit match. I don't remember what exactly they called it to be. I'm sorry that it's slipping my mind, but I agree. We'll just say I'll go with the submissions match, submissions only match. I think that's a great idea. Something that you could get over. Something like a Swagger and Cesaro could go in. Cesaro not known for submissions, Swagger is. You could debut a new submission for him. But I like to see that happen. Something kind of an I Quit submission style match. Next up, the question of the week for this week. Something I just touched on with Rusev just a minute ago. Who's been, in your time watching wrestling, who's been the least believable monster? We've had several monsters. We've had guys like Kane, The Undertaker, Vader. We've had very successful guys play the monster role, but we've had some not so successful. Who's been the least believable for you? Let us know what you think. Hit us up on Twitter. Hit us up on Facebook. Put it down where? Down there in the comments. Next up, the good segment of the night. The stuff I actually enjoy. Obviously, it's been skipped so far, so you know the first segment's going to be the first one up. John Cena cutting a promo in the cage. Kind of teetering on the dark side for Cena. I don't think it'll ever happen, but I like to see when they tease and teeter on it. Then Bray Wyatt comes out. Actually, the chorus of children come out, followed by Bray Wyatt, all singing, "He's got the whole world in his hands." It was disturbing, it was creepy, and it was perfect. You had John Cena's key demographic, the children, are siding with Bray Wyatt. They're wearing sheet masks. He's sitting in there in a rocking chair, maniacally laughing. Brilliant, brilliant, brilliant. John Cena, in his facial expressions, watch this, Rusev, when you do watch back the show, sold more of what Bray Wyatt was doing than what Bray Wyatt was doing. And Bray Wyatt is amazing. Don't get me wrong. Don't misconstrue this to me saying that Bray Wyatt didn't make that segment great. It takes two to tango, though, folks. And John Cena made Bray Wyatt look just as creepy, disturbing, and as much as a threat as anyone's ever looked to be to John Cena. Which is great. Which is what we need in this era. Now next up, we had a tag team match. The Usos versus Ryback. I hate to say it, Ryback's starting to grow on me. I think they're starting to become a really solid team, a solid unit. The Uso brothers, I think, are the best permanent tag team on the roster. I would never ever break them up, but you know, eventually they're going to, because that's, for some reason, they hate tag teams being just tag teams. I thought this was a solid match. I'd like to see more of it. I think they could do great things together. After that, we have Jack Swagger versus Antonio Cesaro. I like to call this one of those wet your whistle matches. They didn't give us all that we're going to see, but they gave us enough to want more. You had the end come when Paul Heyman grabbed Zeb Coulter's beard or mustache, distracts Swagger so Cesaro could hit a wicked gut-wrench German suplex. Great stuff. I think these guys are working perfect together, and later on we'll even talk about something else that I think is going to make this feud even better. Next up, we had Stephanie apologizing to Daniel Bryan and Brie Bella, or Brie Bryan, whatever you want to call her now, leading us into where Bryan doesn't believe her, or Brie doesn't believe her, leading us into Brie getting a Divas Championship match against Paige. Paige comes down. The only thing I have a minor issue with this is we're still introducing Paige, who is one of the top female wrestling talents in the galaxy, and using her as a pawn in this, it's not that bad, but it's a little bit of an issue. They have Brie versus Paige. Before we go to commercial, before we come back in the match, we see that Kane's mask is missing from Stephanie's office, which leads us to, during the match, Kane comes up from under the ring, tries to kidnap Brie, which brings out Daniel Bryan. He fights a good fight against the monster. The monster gets the upper hand, keeps trying to kidnap Brie. Eventually, she gets away from him as well. I liked it. It sold. It helped build the match that's coming up Sunday. Kane versus Daniel Bryan is going to be a fantastic match. The psychology, the attempted kidnapping, the trying to kill Daniel Bryan, the whole thing is going to add to that match and make it just as special. And last but not least, of the things that I liked, the finals of the Intercontinental #1 Contender Tournament, Wade Barrett versus Rob Van Dam. Thought this was a good match. I thought it was awesome. I love to see the fact that they're pushing Wade Barrett. He's someone I think could be a major star in wrestling. We've seen the interference of Cesaro and Swagger again, which I think they're going to turn into a three-way feud between Rob Van Dam, Cesaro, and Jack Swagger. The swerve, I think, would be Van Dam screws Swagger over and becomes, once again, what he's always been, a Paul Heyman guy. I liked it though. Barrett, I think, if he doesn't win the Intercontinental title in the pay-per-view, I'd be severely disappointed. They've built him up very well. He's really dialing in the Bad News Barrett character. I think it's a great step for him, and I think him going forward as the Intercontinental Champion would be something really interesting. Not that he hasn't had it before, but maybe we could build the prestige back up, guys. Coming off of that, we're going to go right into our ratings. If you've seen the show before, you know we have a 1 to 5 scale. 1 being the worst, 5 being the best. 1 is a great Khali, 2 is a Santino Marella, 3 is a Damian Sandow, 4 is an Antonio Cesaro, 5 is a Daniel Bryan. I'm going to give this a 3, a Damian Sandow. A lot of very good things. Too much so-so, too much bad for my opinion. This should have been a go-home match for a pay-per-view. And I'll say this and I'll say this again, even though they're not calling them pay-per-views or specialty shows or whatever the fuck they want to call them. The go-home match or show for the pay-per-view should be the best one that month. And this wasn't. So therefore, I give it a 3, a middle of the road, Damian Sandow. Could have been a lot better, could have been a lot worse. Basically, that's all I have to say about that. My name is George Coles, and this has been another episode of Heel Heat.